giving you the backstory from political insiders every afternoon. It's Aaron Rand and Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
All right, our Legal Corner with Chris Dimakos is brought to you by Silver Star Mercedes-Benz, reminding you their certified sale is on now. Hundreds of cars, by the way, including EVs and hybrids, all at Silver Star Mercedes-Benz, 7800 DeCarry Boulevard, Canada's #1 Mercedes-Benz dealer. Chris, I need to read the first part of this because this is a crazy story. So, this is a judgment of the dangers of how language in a transaction can actually cost you. So here's a guy, long-term employee at a printing company, gets laid off, during COVID. Company offers him a severance package. He fights it because he felt it wasn't enough, and he wins. He's awarded with 2 years of severance. Then he gets a job offer from a rival company with almost the same salary, but he figures, hey, you know what? I'd rather stay home and collect severance. Then what happened?
So once that happens, the company that originally let him go is saying to themselves, we're paying this employee to stay home because it's a severance package. We might as well call him back to work and have him work for us. So they call back the employee. The employee does not want to come back to work, so the lawyer starts posturing and saying, we want this, we want this. So what happens is the company that originally let him go goes to court and says, hey, he has the opportunity to start working and making some money, and he doesn't want to do so. He's not mitigating his damages, so we have a right to, first of all, stop paying him, and second of all, claim back all the money that we paid him because of him supposedly looking for work when he wasn't looking for work. And after the courts took a look at all the evidence and all the testimony, the court found that, yes, the employee in question did not want to work, was refusing to mitigate the damages, and stripped him of almost all of his severance. And what you should take away here is there's no question that when you go to court and there's a judgment rendered, there's not a lot of flexibility that you have with regards to how that money is going to be paid to you and when that money can be claimed back. That's one of the downfalls of risking everything to going for judgment. If you are in a situation where you've been let go and you're negotiating with your lawyer a parting package, you can have language in there that protects you from these types of things, and especially how it gets paid to you, mitigating the tax impact on your settlement, mitigating when and how the company can try and claw back some of that money. So you have a lot of flexibility when you do things and you settle things out of court that you don't have when you go to court. But the golden rule here is just because you're getting a severance package that you were awarded, a settlement you were awarded in court, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to look for work during that time to mitigate your damages.
Well, hold on a sec. Here's where I'm kind of confused. He goes to court, he wins a bigger package, right? Had he not been offered another job by a competing company that he declined, wouldn't he have been in the clear and could have just sat on his backside for 2 years and collected severance?
Most of the time, what happens is the company that let you go washes their hands of this, most of the time. And people sit there. Sometimes they get a lump sum, and when you get a lump sum, it's almost like a clean break. But in this case here, when you get a judgment and there's payments that are made that are sequential, every 2 weeks you get your pay, what happens is there's a law that says you have to mitigate your damages. So you're getting 2 years of salary so that you can help transition from one job to the next. That doesn't mean that you don't ever have to work again. It means you have to make a reasonable effort to find another job. So in practical terms, it almost very rarely happens that the company that let you go starts wanting to hire you back. But these are tough times right now. Employers are looking to cut funds. So the advice here is if you are in a situation where you are collecting a severance, whether it's because of a settlement, whether it's because you want a judgment, you have to make sure that you are abiding by your obligations, which might be you have to try reasonably to find another job, similar salary, similar type of job, not anything, something that resembles what you previously had. That's what the law says. You have to try and mitigate the impact and the damages. Now, is it exercised much? No. Usually, when there's a break between employee and employer, it usually one party washes their hands of the other, and they go on their merry way. But in this case, the original company said, "Only 1 second here. We're paying this person to sit down. We can have him come back to work for us, and since we're going to pay him, might as well have him in our factory."
You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say this sounds almost vindictive in a sense, right? The company's saying, hey, we're paying you for 2 years and this is what you're doing. You had another job offer, chose to not take it. So just come into work, do nothing but sit at a desk, and we'll continue to pay you.
Right, and that's what it sounded like. But unfortunately, the way things worked out, that should have been discussed beforehand. You know, many times when you are in litigation with an employer and you're sitting with your lawyer, and yes, you always talk about the potential. What is my max here that I can get? You always talk about that, but you always have to consider all the different scenarios that can take place. Even if you get best case scenario in terms of monetary award, what can happen there in the next 2 years? What are all the possible scenarios? And if you can settle out of court, maybe even concede a little bit of that amount, but have more protection and have more freedom and have less of a tax impact, you got to look at those things. So, again, I say this all the time. Make sure you understand all of the different scenarios before you make a decision, because if you just look at the monetary, there's things that might be attached to that award that you don't want to have happen. So it's a global approach, and everything has to be considered when you make a decision. So
let me ask you, in this particular case, Chris, would he have been better off taking the original offer, even though it was a minimal offer, and he ended up getting a bigger deal at a tribunal? But at the end of the day, this kind of ended up stabbing him in the back. Would he have been better just to take the first offer?
Yeah, right. So I'll tell you. No, the first offer was very low. I can say that, having done this many times, right before the trial ended, they're probably in a good position to negotiate. Things probably didn't go so well during trial. That's why he got a big award. And they probably should have sat down with the other side and say, look, this is where this is going. You know this is not going to go well. Do you want to sit down and hammer out a settlement here? You're going to be on the hook for the maximum amount of 2 years. Let's sit down and make a settlement that will save you some money. When you have all of the leverage, that's when you want to sit down and negotiate a settlement. So that's probably what I would have advised.
Last question real quick. I don't know if this applies or not. So in this case, when he got offered that second job and turned it down, had he taken that job, would his first employer been off the hook to pay him severance for the full amount?
Well, the first employer would have, they would have had a difference. So, for example, if it wasn't topped up, then they would have had to pay the difference of the amount where he was making. So, basically, any money you earn would get subtracted from the total amount. So you would be topped up by the first employer.
CJAD 800 legal contributor Chris Dimakos. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, there you go. Our feature brought to you by the folks at Silver Star Mercedes-Benz. Just again, a reminder, great deals right now from Canada's #1 Mercedes dealer. Certified pre-owned, 100 vehicles in inventory, gas, electric, AMG, and new inventory arriving daily. 7800 DeCarry Boulevard. Online, silverstar.ca.